Welcome to Digital Asset News. Take the top stories in cryptocurrency and digital assets and breaks them down in bite-sized pieces. Today, we're only going to go over one story, but it is such a good story and a well-written article, it just deserves the whole video. So this is written by Matt Hogan, and he writes, Why Bitcoin is Valuable, Debunking the Greater Fool Theory. And before we get into that, let's just check out what's going on with the markets. Today, it is June 20th. And it looks like Bitcoin is holding steady around 93.79 or almost 9,400. So good for that. 24 hours just went up 0.6%. So nothing too big. And the whole market overall just hasn't really done too much, except for there is one called Compound. If you don't know, Compound just got added to Coinbase, so of course it's going to have that Coinbase bump. We'll see how that works out, but I believe that Compound is now the number one in DeFi just by getting listed on Coinbase. Unbelievable. Anyhow, let's jump into today's story. So again, Matt Hogan writes this fantastic article which really just lays it out as to why Bitcoin and essentially cryptocurrency is a major deal, a major player, and why everything has value, or actually in this case, why Bitcoin has value. So before we get into the article, Matt Hogan, who is this guy? Who is writing? Who is reporting this? Is this just some schlup, some guy? Well, no, actually, Matt here is the global head of research for Bitwise Asset Management, created the world's first cryptocurrency index fund, and a deep believer in the power of crypto to improve both the world and investor portfolios. He's also the chairman of Insight ETFs, the world's leading ETF education company, and an advisor to multiple startups. So when we take a look at who is writing these articles, we want to see exactly what their background is and their experience. So with Matt, I think we'll give him a pass. So let's start off with this article, and I got to tell you, it's a beautiful article, very well written, very well laid out, so I'm going to have to follow Matt on Twitter and just send him a thanks. Anyhow, he says, I speak with lots of investors about Bitcoin, and they raise a lot of questions about custody, volatility, evolving regulatory standards, but there's often one more question lodged in the back of people's minds, one people don't even want to raise for fear of being impolite, which is, why does Bitcoin have any value at all? And I can just tell you, for you sitting there watching this video, I'm sure you've had this discussion with people as to why Bitcoin does or doesn't have value, why you invested into it or any cryptocurrency. And, sometimes we have so much information. We are cursed with knowledge. That's what it's called, the curse of knowledge. So if we can just streamline our thoughts and get them out there, we can really educate people, especially in this most critical time. 2020 and 2021, I think, are going to be huge years for cryptocurrency digital assets. But of course, only time will prove me right or wrong. So this is going to be a great article moving into some of the basics that we're going to go over as to how you can explain this better to people. So, why does Bitcoin have any value? This is the objection that has tripped up some of my personal investing heroes like Jack Bogle and Warren Buffett. Buffett summarized, and he stated that cryptocurrencies basically have no value. You can't do anything with it except sell it to somebody else, and he also called it rat poison squared. But remember, Warren Buffett also passed on Google because he didn't understand what the whole point of it was. So not everybody knows everything, even as fantastic of an investor as Warren Buffett is. But in the financial literature, when you're talking about you can only sell it to somebody else for value, this is known as the greater fool theory. The idea is that you should never invest in something if its value depends solely on selling it to someone else at a higher price. And you'll hear like gold bugs like Peter Schiff talk about this all the time. He'll say Bitcoin is it's a Ponzi scheme, and you're just waiting for to sell it off to somebody at a higher price. And we're going to talk about why that is totally untrue. Anyhow, stock, bonds, and real estate assets generate cash flows and can be valued based on them, the thinking goes. Bitcoin doesn't create anything at all. That's the old world thinking. But here's a lesson, and I like how he gets into the stories, because stories or how we have communicated our ideas and our thoughts throughout time. So when he tells these stories, I love it because it totally makes sense about what happened in the past, what's happening now, what's going to happen in the future. So he talks about crude oil, and prior to the late 1800s, crude oil was mostly a nuisance. Who'd have thunk it? Pioneers in the American West who dug wells searching for water would sometimes find oil and be disappointed. Imagine that. I live in Texas, and I can tell you right now, no one's disappointed to find oil. Finding oil was about as interesting as finding mud. Things started to change when George Bissell had a breakthrough in the 1850s. He wondered whether rock oil, as it was called, could be processed and be used as a illuminant or replacing coal for kerosene lamps and as a lubricant for machines. And that's how the industry was born. One guy just figured out that this disgusting stuff can actually be used to create a light or actually have a purpose. And when I read this, I'm like, well, it's the same thing with Bitcoin. There was one lonely computer scientist. We assume it could be one lonely guy, a gal, or a group of people. They could have been computer scientists or just hackers or whatever they were. But they were just out there and they thought, you know what? We're sick of this financial collapse that happened in 2008, which brought about the housing market crash and banks being too big to fail. And that was the whole catalyst for Bitcoin being born, because they were sick of he or she was sick of what had happened in the past. So that's how the oil industry was born. That's how Bitcoin is born. For the first few years, however, demand of oil remained low. What a correlation. Same thing with Bitcoin. The turn of the century saw engineers experimenting with internal combustion engines as automobiles grew from toys to essentials, and the demand for oil skyrocketed. So back in the day, cars were considered ridiculous. And, this is like the late 1800s, mid 1800s, late 1800s. They're like, why would anybody use that? We have a horse and buggy that's been used for a very long time, seems to be very reliable. Why would we use a car? It makes no sense. So you can see the same correlation between oil, now cars, and now Bitcoin. And actually, there is a great documentary. It's called the Bitcoin documentary, Cryptocurrencies by Plot 11. And it just came out about a week ago or so. And I would love to play it for you, but if I play it, I will get a copyright strike. So I'm just going to tell you that this is the documentary. I'm going to link it into the description below. But from the time of like 34:59 to 35 minutes, it talks about the same exact thing. There was, in the late 1800s or mid 1800s, there was a massive threat to the stagecoach and railroad industry because of cars. They called them road trains, and they were railed against by these railroad barons. And info was sent out to the public that these contraptions would damage the roads, they would scare horses, they would injure people, and just an awful thing to have, which is the same thing we see with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. They say, you know what, this is awful. It's going to be used for money laundering. It's going to be used for the drug cartels. It's going to be used for these massive illegal entities. And same thing here that we have with these cars. Basically, it was just too dangerous for the good of the people, and the people were just essentially too stupid and too clumsy to use it. What does that sound like? Anyhow, to protect everyone, there was a law passed to limit the speed limit of these cars to 4 miles per hour, and all vehicles must be operated by a crew of 3 persons. That means there has to be a driver, an engineer, and a flagman. So that is the rule that they had back then. Now, can you imagine that happening in today, in 2020? That's ridiculous. It's just how it is. But that was the mentality back then, and I believe that's kind of how the mentality is right now as far as Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. All right, let's jump back. Anyhow, moving down, he said very few saw the potential of the new light early on, or oil. But those who did, like John Rockefeller, were responsible for some of the largest examples of value creation to this day. And that's exactly what happened with Rockefeller. He got into oil, he saw the potential, and people are like, why are you getting into that? That makes no sense. It's just this crude, sticky, disgusting stuff that you can only use for light. No. It's going to be big. And the same thing's being happened with like big players in the game, like Tim Draper, Mike Novogratz, Barry Seibert from Grayscale. You who are watching this video, and me, we are all a part of that early type of adopter, and I believe it's going to be big. Bitcoin today is analogous to oil after the development of the kerosene lamps. Individuals use it today to store, and we're talking about Bitcoin, outside of the fiat currency system. It means it's digital gold, to move money across borders and to settle large transactions quickly and in an irreversible fashion. In certain countries, Venezuela will say, it provides a release valve for citizens concerned about oppressive regimes. But just like oil in the 1800s, these applications are just scratching the surface of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency's potential. I'll just throw that in there. Kerosene lamps were a proof of concept. Oil's real value lay in being a store of energy that could be transported easily and released in an intense fashion. Similarly, Bitcoin's current utility is limited, only 21 million. Its real value lies in allowing money to move at internet speeds and allowing it to be held in a autonomous fashion, which is great. I mean, we're talking about store of value. Gold's a store of value. Silver's a store of value. Oil could even be a store of value, even though it crashed just recently. So it's pretty tough to hang around or lug around gold bars. You can't do that. Very tough. Pretty hard to lug around oil barrels. Extremely hard. But pretty easy to lug around. Actually, you don't even lug anything around for Bitcoin. It's just there. It's for you. So investors buying Bitcoin today are betting that the future use cases will be massive. And here's where it gets interesting. So if 10% of the wealth currently stored in physical gold comes to be stored in Bitcoin in the future, each Bitcoin will be worth around 50,000. We just saw it's worth around 9,400 right now. So just 10% of what's in gold, which I don't understand why there should be that much in gold, honestly, can be moved over to Bitcoin, $50,000. If the same amount of wealth stored in gold today, I mean all the wealth in gold is put into Bitcoin in the future, each Bitcoin would then be worth $500,000. Let that sink in. If Bitcoin significantly penetrates parts of the offshore wealth, escrow payments, remittance, or other markets, the potential is significantly larger. So what I'm going to do is just take a step back. I want you to take a look at what is called all the money in the entire world in a nice little visualization. I use this a lot, but this really hits home for this video. So I want you to see this little square right here. That little square represents 100 billion. So silver isn't even there. It's actually 43 billion. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, everything else is around 244 billion, about 260 right now. Military spending, we're looking at a pretty big budget. U.S. budget deficit, coins and banknotes, 6.6 trillion. Fed's balance, billionaires. Look at these guys. Bezos, Gates are now good for them. Gold right here is worth about almost $11 trillion. And this was just released, I think, in April of 2020, so it's pretty up to date. And remember, look right here, below ground reserves. We don't know how much there is. We have no idea. So, I mean, we talk about the scarcity. Gold isn't that scarce. At least Bitcoin's finite at 21 million. We know that's a hard cap. Fortune 500 companies, as I call them, mega Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, Google, or Alphabet, Amazon, and Facebook. They make up about 20 to 25% of the S&P 500, and they're worth trillions. Stock markets, you got 89 trillion there. The money supply, and remember, money supply, 7% is only physical. Only 7% of money is physical. If you go to your bank, and let's say you have 250,000 there, I don't know if you did, but congratulations, you got a lot of money. If you say, I want to take all my money out, they would say, sorry, we can't help you right now. Come back in a couple days because we don't carry that much cash. That's your bank. That's even a big bank. So 7% physical, pretty eye-opening. 93% is non-physical, but at 35 trillion, pretty amazing. Here's global debt, 253 trillion, and America is just going up and looking to be number one for that. And then moving down, global real estate, 280 trillion. Imagine if you could tokenize different parts of real estate and sell those pieces off. That's a more advanced concept, but you get my drift. 280 trillion here. Then moving down, here's global wealth, and you got a big amounts of trillions, 360 trillion. Let me say that again. $360 trillion of global wealth. And then here is the big one, derivatives. So on the low end, we're looking at 558 trillion. That's the low end estimate. And then let's just scroll down, swaps and futures and whatever else. But here it is, 1 quadrillion. This is a higher end estimate. And the thing is, there's so much money sloshing around, nobody really knows. And just remember, what is Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrencies? It's looking just like that. So when Matt here is talking about money moving in and Bitcoin being a part, we're at the very beginning. I can only see this going up, but I could be wrong. Who knows? Anyhow, Matt goes on to say those numbers may sound extreme, but after what we just saw, I don't think it's that extreme at all. But it's worth remembering that digital versions of analog goods are often met with skepticism initially. People did not think digital media would replace newspapers. And for all you kids out there, 25 and below, I mean, you're not kids, you're adults, but I mean, younger generation, I would say, newspapers were it. You'd get them delivered, you pop them open, that was your news. It was awesome. There was 3 channels on TV, that was great. You get all your news there, Walter Cronkite come on, fantastic. That whole has just changed. And all these industries never thought it would. and here we are. So newspapers didn't believe that digital advertising could compete with print and TV. Who advertises in the newspaper? Nobody. Well, very few people, but some. Believe me, I do a lot of advertising for my businesses, and it's all on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And those are what drives everything. And people or businesses were hugely skeptical that online retail could compete with physical stores. And as we just seen with Amazon destroying everything in its path, that was debunked. And in each case, time proved them wrong. And I think the same thing's going to happen with cryptocurrency digital assets. People are laughing at it now. Or actually, I don't think people are laughing now. I think people are sitting up and they're taking notice. And I think they're still skeptical, but as time moves on, it's only inevitable. Anyhow, moving on. Buying Bitcoin today is like buying oil in 1850 after seeing its early utility, with the big difference being that you know that no new oil can ever be created, even as demand grows and new use cases emerge. And unlike oil with Bitcoin, you're in no rush because as a digital asset, you can store it cheaply for years while demand builds. Again, oil is not finite. There is a certain amount. We don't know exactly how much it is. The same thing with gold. There's only so much, but we keep finding more, so we really can't put a cap on it. With Bitcoin, at least you know, 21 million, that's it. So to sum it all up, those of us who have spent time investing in crypto, including some of the leading technology companies, entrepreneurs, inventors, and venture capitalists, foresee a future where money moves with the speed of text messages, where financial access is available to all, and where all investors have an easy way to escape the casual destruction of wealth that attends most fiat currencies over time. So if you know about inflation, you know that that is your secondary tax. So everything that you save and put in your bank, you're just losing money, roughly 2% every year. And over time, it really adds up. So if you're holding everything in cash, maybe it's time to think about investing into something else. Not financial advice, that's just what I do. As this world arrives, you'll be glad to have bought a stake before the value becomes plain for all to see. And that's the thing. If you're watching this video right now, I don't care who says it, you're an early adopter. This is so early. You can go out in the street and talk to anybody and go, hey, do you know about Bitcoin? Good chance people are going to say, yeah, I know about that. Now ask them about Ethereum. Ask them about Tron. Ask them about Tomato Coin or whatever else coin is out there. And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is so early and so new, you just have to sit back and enjoy the ride because in years to come, it's going to be big. But this is going to bring me up to my next point, and that is this year, 2020, 2021, next year, I think are going to be big. And I think you're going to get bombarded with questions from people going, hey, what's up with this Bitcoin? What's going on? And I want you to be able to speak in a simplified, concise fashion. Because on this channel, I talk about cryptocurrency digital assets every single day. And I got to tell you one thing. So I had a friend ask me about it just last week. And I got to tell you, my response that I gave him was horrible. It was just awful because, again, I was cursed with knowledge. And I wanted to, what we call in sales, show up and throw up, which is where you just have all this information, you just dump it on them. And people, you can just see it, they just get glazed over. So what I'm going to talk about now is how I would like to see, and to make it simple for you, to explain about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency digital assets and what I call the elevator pitch.
Well, Allison should know.
What is internet anyway?
Internet is that
massive computer network.
The one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
All right, so this is the Bitcoin elevator pitch, and I put this together because, again, like what had happened to me, like I'm trying to explain something to somebody, and it just has to be more simple. It just has to be more fluid. It just has to be easier so people can get it. Remember, just like that video that we just saw from the Today Show. I mean, people are it's just too much over their head. So you have to break it down, make it short, sweet, and very simple. So now remember, this is just for the very simplified part of an elevator pitch. If you want to get into more of the more advanced stuff, I did a video that went over, what's blockchain and Bitcoin, what's a smart contract, what's an oracle, and that kind of lays down the nuts and bolts, as far as like decentralization, distributed ledger technology, how everything works, and mining, and everything that has to do with that, so you can have a more complex discussion when the time arises. But again, this is just a basic type of thing to tell people to where you're not fumbling over your words and you're not doing too much so they're not too like way confused. So let's break into it. So I break it down into three parts. Why and what is an elevator pitch? Why do things have value, and why does Bitcoin have value? So first of all, what's an elevator pitch? An elevator pitch in sales is basically the ability to come in and talk to somebody and within 30, 40 seconds, pretty much tell them what you do, give them a value proposition, and give them an unbeatable offer. And you're supposed to do that in a very short amount of time. And it really helps when you kind of can convey your message, and it helps to convert everybody. So for me, I have a couple businesses. One of those is I help nursing students pass their clinical exam through an online education platform. And if it doesn't work for you, it has a double your money back guarantee. So that's pretty much my elevator pitch. So I tell you what I do. I give you the value proposition, and I give you an unbeatable offer. And it works pretty well for a lot of nursing students, and seems to be going on for 10 years now, so not too bad. So the same thing for Bitcoin. That's what I want to have to give to you today, so you can just kind of like come up with your own pitch to where when people say, hey, what's this Bitcoin? Because it's going to happen. You can just tell them in like, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, this is what it is, this is a value proposition, da-da-da, and off you go. So why do we want to give an elevator pitch? Well, it kind of comes down to because things are confusing out there. I mean, like we just saw that video where people are like, what's the internet? It's the same thing with what's Bitcoin. And then people's attention spans are severely limited as well. I mean, I'm surprised you're still with me, honestly, because this is a long video, but here you are. So to keep somebody's attention span is pretty tough to do. And when you're talking about new technology, and especially when people are skeptical, they tend to kind of just glaze over it. Also, your friends and families are not economists. So if you're going to start talking about well, it's fungible, it's divisible, it's recognizable, and all those different things that are the value of money or the aspects of money, it's just not for them, I don't think. Now, if you have somebody who's a little bit higher level, sure, you can talk about that, but don't fall down that trap, because that's what I did as I talked to my friends. They're like, what are you talking about? That makes no sense. Just tell us what it is. And then lastly, simplicity beats complex every single time. And I'll show you how that all works. So, because things are confusing, let's talk about how things are so confusing right now. The Today Show, which I just mentioned a little bit ago, we're going to take a look at this video. This was from 1994 when the internet first came out. People were like, what are you talking about as far as the internet? I know for some of you younger folks, you have no idea what this is. The internet's always been around, but there was a time, believe it or not, when the internet wasn't around. And the same type of questions and attitudes that people have back then as far as the internet, because no one, believe me, when I was around, I was like, internet's not going to be that big. It's just going to be for, education. Maybe we can read some things on a blog or whatever else, but it's not going to be that big. And we were all wrong. So we were all wrong. And the same thing that is going to happen with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, digital assets. So let's take a look at little time warp.
Yes, I wasn't prepared to translate that as I was doing that little tease.
Oh, that's
that little
right.
mark with the A and then the ring around it.
At.
See, that's what I said.
Mm-hmm.
Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I'd never heard it.
Around
I'd never heard it
about.
said. I'd always
That's
seen
right.
the mark, but never heard
Yeah.
it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC.
I
would
heard
be
something
around
big
or
fun
about?
up in the lunchroom the other
See,
week.
there it is. Violence at NBC. GE.com. I mean,
Well, Allison should know. What do you
is
say to that,
internet
Allison?
anyway?
Internet is that
Massive computer
right,
network.
the one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
No, she can't say anything in 10 seconds or less.
Oh, Allison will be in the studio shortly.
What is
What
it?
does it mean?
It's a giant computer network made up of started from.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us what this was.
It's like
You
a
looked in the
computer
dictionary.
billboard.
It's not an. It's a computer billboard, but it's
Right.
nationwide. It's several universities and everything all joined together. And
Right.
it's-
And others can access it.
and-
Right.
And it's getting bigger and bigger all the time.
It
Just
came
great.
in really handy during the quake. A lot of people, that's how they were communicating out to tell family and loved ones they were okay because all the phone lines were down.
I was telling Katie, and I've
But
been
you don't
talking.
need that. You don't need a phone line to operate internet.
No.
So yeah, pretty amazing, right? I mean, that is exactly how it was, and that is exactly how it is right now, I feel, with cryptocurrency digital assets. So because things are confusing, if you start talking about wacky things like hash rates and difficulty adjustments, and it's fungible, and there's hard forks or soft forks or stock to flow ratio, distributed technology, and it's decentralized, people are like, what are you talking about? And essentially, they're going to be like, this is what you're going to sound like to them.
Of an instrument that would not only provide inverse reactive current for use in unilateral phase detractors, but would also be capable of automatically synchronizing cardinal gram meters, is that instead of power being generated by the relative motion of conductors and fluxes, it's produced by the modial interaction of magneto-reluctance and capacitive diractance. The lineup consisted simply of 6 hydrocoptic Marsal vanes, so fitted to the ambifacient lunar wane shaft that side fumbling was effectively prevented. The main winding was of the normal lotus-o-deltoid type placed in panendermic semi-boloid slots of the stator. Every 7th conductor being connected by a non-reversible Tremi pipe to the differential girdle spring on the up end of the gram meters. Moreover, whenever fluorescent score motion is required, it may also be employed in conjunction with a drawn reciprocation dingle arm to reduce sinusoidal depleneration.
So again, KISS. Keep it simple, smarty, because it's just Bitcoin and blockchain. So let's simplify it. So first of all, people's attention spans are severely limited. That's the problem also. So if you start going to all this wacky stuff, this is what's going to happen. They're just going to glaze over. The average attention span in 2000 was 12 seconds, thanks to the internet. And then, of course, in 2013, it was 8 seconds. And now in 2020, I can only imagine how low it is. And just to give you a point of reference, average attention span of goldfish is 9. So when you're talking to your friends, family, and loved ones, make sure you keep it concise and a little bit compressed and simple. So again, your friends and family are not economists. I would not go into this discussion initially, talking about the aspects of money and gold and all those things, durable, gold durable, Bitcoin's durable, fiat money's kind of durable. It's divisible. It can be broken down. Bitcoin can be broken down to 100 million Satoshis. It's portable, which is debatable with gold. I'm not lugging around gold coins. It's fungible. One Bitcoin is equal to 1 Bitcoin wherever you go. Same thing with a dollar. It's scarce, super scarce. As far as Bitcoin goes, it's 21 million versus oil and gold and fiat. Fiat's not scarce whatsoever. Money printing. And of course, it's recognizable. So these are the types of things when you want to have like a higher level conversation, when people come to you and like, hey, as far as like fiat money or the dollar, Bitcoin is a matchup. Then you can start to have these conversations. But that's not the point of this video. So again, simplicity beats complexion, or being complex. And Steve Jobs said it best. He says, focus and simplicity. Simple can be harder than complex. You just have to work hard to get your thinking clean, to make it simple, because it's worth it in the end, because you can move mountains. And of course, also Albert Einstein said the same thing, almost. He said everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. And this is a guy who worked in the atomic bomb. So maybe we can glean a little information from Albert and Steve. So here essentially is my Bitcoin elevator pitch and what I've kind of revised it down to, just to make things super clean and simple. So I just say, hey, Bitcoin's digital gold, because it's just easy for people to relate. Now I know there's some people screaming at the screen right now, it's not digital gold, da da da. If you can just relate to it and relate to the people you're talking to, you're just trying to give them a point of reference. So just say Bitcoin is digital gold, or Bitcoin is gold 2.0, okay? And then what I say is there's only 21 million, so it's super scarce, and that's it. And then I go on and I say you can send it anywhere in the world in minutes for next to nothing. And then of course it's the best performing asset class ever, better than gold, oil, or any stock ever. Also, it used to be worth a nickel, and now it's worth $9,300 or whatever, $10,000. And that's why I heavily invested into it. So again, I'm telling you what it is. I'm giving you the value proposition. I'm giving you the unbeatable offer. So Bitcoin is gold. There's only 21 million. Super rare. You can send it anywhere in the world in minutes, next to nothing. It's the best performing asset class ever. It used to be worth a nickel, now it's worth 10 grand. And that's why I heavily invested into it. So if you say something like that, it kind of draws people in, and you don't have to go over, well, it's fungible, and it's divisible, and it's da-da-da. Like, what are you talking about? Just give me the points. So I think we just answered why an elevator pitch, or what's an elevator pitch. So the next part is, why do things have value? So if you want to go down that road, why do things have value? Because essentially, as soon as you get done with the elevator pitch, they're going to say, hey, this dollar has value because it's backed by gold in the U.S. government. Swear to God, people will still say that. So first of all, you have to tell them politely that no, we were taken off the gold standard a long time ago by Tricky Dick Nixon. So that doesn't really curtail what you were talking about here. It is backed by the U.S. government in the full faith, but I mean, come on. How much are we going to do as far as printing money and everything else? So yeah, it is backed by the government, sure. But you know what's not backed by the government? Gold isn't backed by the government, and it's worth a lot of money, and people just believe it does because they have a belief in gold. Also, if it's like oil and electricity, well, it's not backed by the government either, and it's not backed by gold, but it has a function, like oil has function, runs our cars, electricity, we all need that. So if you're talking about why do things have value, well, there's different reasons for value. So if they just whip out a dollar and be like, well, this has value, well, you have to remember, there's other things that have value for different reasons. Just talk about that. So why do things have value? Makes sense, right? I was tripped up by this because I was always trying to compare Bitcoin to the dollar, and they're always like, well, it's backed by this and whatever else, and it doesn't really matter. Things have value for different reasons. So again, why does Bitcoin have value? Well, we just talked about the elevator pitch, right? Hey, look, Bitcoin's digital gold. It's only be 21 million ever, so it's going to be super scarce. You can send it anywhere in the world to anybody within minutes, and it costs next to nothing. It's the best performing asset of all time, and it crushes everything, oil, stocks, whatever, ever. And of course, it used to be a nickel, now it's worth 10 grand. So you say that, I think that kind of wipes the whole slate clean. Then you can start talking about more advanced stuff like, hey, it's decentralized, which, you know, helps out for the global economy, and it's an open source type of thing. You can talk about the oil story that we just talked about, like, look, oil wasn't worth anything in the beginning because there was no really use cases, but as people actually saw the benefits, they invested heavily into it, like Rockefeller, and look where he is. You can compare it to gold. You can talk about the thing with durable and divisible, and people believe in it, just like Bitcoin. People believe in that, and heck, it's a lot more portable. And of course, the last thing you should probably do is tell them, hey, check out Digital Asset News on YouTube. This guy kind of knows what he's talking about, and just go from there. So I think that kind of breaks all those things down in the best way possible. And again, I just want you, when you're talking about it to your friends and family, just to have a really smooth approach, very simplified, and just a clean thought process. So you're not fumbling over your words like I did. You're not saying too much because you probably know a lot. And it just makes things just a lot bit simpler, and then people can kind of get it. It's just helpful to teach things in a very faster, simplified way. All right, so that's it for today. So thanks for sticking with me through that one. It was a little bit long, but it was important information I felt, and hopefully got some value from it. So just so you know, there's a Join Now button underneath. Joining doesn't give you any kind of special privilege or anything else like that. I don't hold anything back. It's kind of like a tip button, really. And these are all my supporters, and I want to say thanks to all you guys out there. So level 1, they pitch in a couple bucks. Helps me, helps the channel. I really appreciate it. So thanks. I really do appreciate it. And also for level 2, they pay a little more, and I give them a shout out. So shout out to All Right Soft. When Mullet always helps me hold it down in the live premieres. Myself, who else? Dave Plummer, Straight Talking Guy. Grant Sharman. We've got Bruce Wood. Baking Benjamins. They do baking for Tezos. So if you're into Tezos, check those guys out. Noah Flippin' Vegas. Martin Lewin. Michael Ralph. William Howell. Crazy Crypto Canuck. Tessie Ryusaki Positive. That's a name. Fire Swing Golf. JC Durex. Crypto Veritas. John Miller. The Office. Elmerg, Michael Jeffrey, The Kell Show, Mage Research, and finally Terry Prosperi, XRP Carolina, whatever, and AE. So thanks to everybody. I really appreciate it. And also for a scam alert, just so you know, my email is dandigitalassetnews@gmail.com. If you get somebody from dandigitalassetnew@gmail, it's just a scammer trying to pull you into some kind of trading thing. It's so stupid. I don't do trading. I'm a dollar cost average guy. I'm very boring. So if you see that email, 2 things. You can just delete it, or send him a nice email back to him and tell him what a piece of trash he is for trying to, screw people out of money like you by falling for this nonsense. And that's it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.